Sounds good. Take it away.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or good night, depending on which side of the world would you be. My name is Karen Chavez, and I represent Colombia as one of the co-chairs, and with Cara Williams in representation of Canada, also as co-chair of the IAEG-SDGs. We would like to welcome you all to the second open meeting in 2021 and the fourth open meeting since COVID-19 appeared in the world. This event is being recorded. All the presentations will be uploaded on the website of the meeting with the recording later on after this meeting ends. Many thanks in advance to all the speakers of the session for the opportunity to learn from your experience. Thanks also to the audience for participating. And of course, a big thanks to the Secretariat who makes this possible. Our program today is split in two sessions. The first half focuses on voluntary national reviews, VNRs, and the second half of the program includes best practices on SDG monitoring. Each session will be followed by a short Q&A, and we will also have time at the end to address some of the questions submitted when attendees registered. And also remind everyone to please submit your questions in the chat as we advance in the meeting. So with this, we are going to move forward to the first agenda item, voluntary national reviews, with presentations about the experience in the use of data for VNRs from 4 countries who will present their reports this year at the HLPF, with participation in this session of colleagues from both National Statistics Institute and also from planning institutions. With this, I will now turn straight to the first speaker of the session, Ms. Nazaria, from she's the Deputy Chief Statistician of Malaysia, of Statistics. So, Nazaria, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you very much. Good morning, good evening. Okay, thank you for the opportunity for Malaysia to share regarding the data selection for VNR 2021. The VNR 2021 is Malaysia's second VNR to be presented to the high-level political forum, and the first VNR was presented in for year 2017. Next, please. Okay, my presentation will cover 3 areas. Basically, the implementation of SDG in Malaysia, and secondly, the data availability for VNR 2021, and the conclusion. Next, please. Next, please. Next, please. Sustainable development has been at the heart of Malaysia's development approach since the 1970s, with the emphasis on eradicating poverty, improving the well-being of the people, providing universal access to education, and caring for the environment. Thus, these areas has been seamlessly embedded in our national development. So, SDG also as well can be embedded seamlessly into the national plans. The SDG are also aligned with the Shared Prosperity Vision 2030 and the 12th Malaysia Plan, covering 3 development dimensions: economic empowerment, environmental sustainability, and social re-engineering. For the SDG, we also developed the National Sdg Roadmap, which is aligned to the Malaysia Plan. Under this roadmap, Malaysia is working towards the 2030 agenda by way of 3 phases, and the duration of each phase covers 5 years, stretching from 2016 to 2030. And this is in line with our 3 national development during those periods. Next, please. In Malaysia, the Economic Planning Unit spearheaded the preparation of the VNR 2021, and we have the steering committee as well as the technical working groups. The second VNR took a different approach by adopting a whole of nation approach with comprehensive multi-stakeholder engagement across government, communities, private sector, academia, and local communities. The main source of the SDG indicators for VNR is extracted from the SDG Indicators 2019 report that is prepared by the Department of Statistics Malaysia, and the report was published in December 2020. So towards the development of VNR, the Department of Statistics contributed 67% of the data. Meanwhile, the remaining data came from the other ministries and agencies. For 2021 VNR, the focus is on sustainable and resilient recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, encompassing 9 goals, that is 1, 2, 3, 8, 10, 12, 13, 16, and 17. Okay, next please. Now I'm going to move to data availability for the VNR 2021. Next please. There are 3 goals involved for people focus area, that is goal 1, 2, and 3. For goal 3, good health and well-being, it shows the highest data availability of 89.3% or 25 out of 28 indicators. Here, I would like to highlight the effort by the Ministry of Health Malaysia, because they are in the midst of preparing the Universal Health Coverage SDG publication. And this will certainly help to the development of indicators under the Ministry of Health. However, for goal 1, no poverty, the availability of the data is only 46.2% or 6 out of 13 indicators. We are still improving the data availability, especially for indicators 1.3.1, social protection indicators. And towards this end, Malaysia is in the process of developing the social protection database, covering elements of employment, insurance, and social assistance to be the sole reference point for social protection programs and profiles in the country. The availability of data for goal 2 and hunger is the lowest, which is 28.6% or 4 out of 14 indicators. For indicator 2.1.2 on food security experience scale, Malaysia will include this indicator in the National Health and Mobility Survey undertaken by the Ministry of Health in 2024 rounds. Next, please. Okay, for prosperity focus area, the goals involved are goal 8 and 10. And the availability for goal 8, decent work and economic growth, are 62.5% or 10 out of 16 indicators. While only 28.6% are available for goal 10, reduced inequalities, that is 4 out of 14 indicators. Here I would like to highlight on goal 10, we are going to include the indicator 10.3.1, proportion of population reporting having personally felt discriminated against or harassed in the previous 12 months in our new survey, that is the multiple indicator cluster survey that will be implemented this year. For indicator 10.1.1, growth rates of household expenditure or income per capita among the bottom 40% of the population and the total population, efforts has been undertaken to improve the data disaggregation to include certain quarters or certain groups such as the indigenous as well as the disabled person, particularly in our household income and expenditure survey. Next, please. Okay, for goal 12 and 13, both of these goals showed that the data availability is less than 50%. The availability of data for goal 12, responsible consumption and production, is only 38.5%. That is 5 out of 13 indicators. While for goal 13, climate action is only 25% or 2 out of 8 indicators. Currently, Malaysia is using proxy data for indicator 12.4.2, hazardous waste generated per capita, as well as proportion of hazardous waste treated by type of treatment, which is quantity of clinical waste handled for destruction at incinerators and scheduled waste managed. The major challenge in waste management is in Malaysia is the different waste is under the different responsibilities of institutions. So is in terms of coordination is quite difficult. The overall management and of hazardous substances and its waste will be improved through the introduction of a dedicated task force, relevant regulations and monitoring mechanism. To support target 13.2, integrate climate change measures into national policies, strategies and planning, a number of local government has implemented low carbon city framework, LCCF, which will improve the greenhouse gas emission for SDG 13.2.2. This effort undertaken by urbanists, an institution in charge of cities in Malaysia. Okay, next. For goal 16 and 17, that is on peace as well as on partnership. The availability of data for goal 16, peace, justice and strong institutions are 33.3%, or 8 out of 24 indicators, while only 25%, 6 out of 24 indicators are available for goal 17, partnerships for the goals. To reduce the data gaps for goal 16, we have included 7 indicators in our new multiple indicator cluster survey, which are 16.1.3, 16.1.4, 16.2.3, 16.3.1, 16.7.2, 16.9.1, and 16.B.1. Okay, next please. This is the overall picture of the data availability by goal. Overall, there are 70 indicators included in the VNR 2021, and 67% of the data are extracted from our SDG indicators publication by DOSM, and the rest is from the relevant ministries and agencies. Goal 1, 2, 10, 12, 13, 16, and 17 are the goals that we still have to work on. Okay, as a conclusion, next slide please. The last slide. Next slide. Okay, from the 9 goals included in VNR 2021, Malaysia managed to report 45.5%, or 70 out of 154 indicators. Overall, the goals with the highest availability are goal 3 and 8, while the other 7 remains under 50% in terms of data availability. The area of concerns for Malaysia that is we should focus on environment, waste, safety and agriculture indicators. Given 9 years left for the implementation of SDG, a lot of works need to be done, especially in terms of data availability. Data collection and SDG indicators will also benefit from the work done by the community, the CSOs and regional development authorities, such as Iskandar Malaysia, one of the regional development authorities in the south of Peninsular Malaysia, as well as Urbanis, the agency I mentioned just now. DOSM, that is the Department of Statistics, will also collaborate with local authorities in developing local SDG indicators. And at the same time, we are going to conduct the new survey, multiple indicator cluster survey in 2021, and to strengthen the use of GIS as well as further engagement with local authorities to improve our data disaggregation and data availability at the smallest area in Malaysia. Thank you very much. Over to you, Karen.
Thank you so much, Nazaria, for your interesting presentation. You have a very detailed status of data availability in the country, which allows to identify data gaps by goal and also has the potential to be used as a tool to prioritize in terms of what is going to
work Malaysia in the next years in terms of data availability. Now I'm going to welcome to our second speaker of the VNR session, Ms. Sarah Frankel from Statistics Sweden. So Sarah, you have the floor, please.
Thank you so much, Karen. Yes, you see my slides now. I'm going to talk about, sorry, my name is Sarah Frankel. I'm from the Statistics Sweden, and I lead the work on the statistical follow-up of the agenda in Sweden. I'm going to talk about the statistical follow-up leading up to the statistical input to the VNRs. So, but I'm going to start with some background on how the statistical follow-up of the agenda has evolved in Sweden, and you'll see in the end why I start that. So I'm going to, oh, hang on. Something's happening. Oops. Sorry. Yeah, so we've had two government assignments in Sweden, or Statistics Sweden, and both have been prepared in dialogue with both between the government office in charge and Statistics Sweden. So this is the first one, which was to produce a baseline report to analyze how Sweden lives up to the goals and targets of the agenda, and also to develop a proposal for reporting structures for the national and global indicators. And second, in June 2018, we got a second assignment for the years 2018 to 2021, so this year, including the task to coordinate the development, production, and availability of statistics for the follow-up of the implementation in Sweden, and also to annually publish an indicator-based statistical review. Also, both these gives Statistics Sweden the task to develop or present national indicators in different ways. You can see where they are. So both these assignments have been very broad and with no extra funding. So which in a way made us kind of free to make of it what we could. And so now I'm going to try to show you what we did make of it. We made a baseline report in 2017, which basically was trying to find everything we could find in terms of statistics in relation to the targets and to the global indicators within the 6 weeks that we had. And the challenge, we sort of focused on what challenges we could find, and the challenges were climate gas emissions, the fact that we couldn't really see that we lived up to the national environment targets, or how we could do that. Violence, threats, and bullying were challenges, and inequalities were challenges. And then we also did a follow-up in 2019. In that review, there were, I would say, there were more structure in the follow-up. We had more national indicators, but the challenges were pretty much the same: inequalities, the national environmental targets, violence, discrimination, and bullying. And because they were the same, and we couldn't see that we would see much development in almost less than a year, where we were supposed to do the next annual review, we decided to focus the next statistical review on one of the challenges, which was then the principle of leaving no one behind, where we focused entirely on that principle, but sort of across the whole agenda. So we decided to review areas of interests instead of goals and targets, sort of flipping the agenda over, not going through the goals and targets, but going through these areas of interest. We found that the same groups reoccurred in all the areas that we investigated as particularly vulnerable. We could also see that circumstances would intersect, or vulnerabilities would intersect across different circumstances that we investigated. We saw also that gender inequality became more visible when we looked at these sort of more intersecting perspective. So then for the review 2021, we developed a report that could be used as is, as a statistical annex for the Swedish VNR. We saw the same challenges again: biodiversity, climate gas emissions, inequalities, violence, bullying, and gender equality. The Statistical Review 2021 did not constitute, or this VNR annex report did not constitute the only, there was not only the annex report, but also indicators on the agenda, or on the web, an NRP of sorts. That is, we published about 150 indicators on dedicated pages on Statistics Sweden's webpage. It's only in Swedish so far, but we're hoping for funding to translate it. So now coming to the VNR process. The statistical part of it was decided in dialogue with the responsible government offices and Statistics Sweden. As background materials for the authors, the responsible government office sent out the follow-up report from 2019. This is Sweden's follow-up report from 2019, and also the report from 2020 on the principle of leaving no one behind. So that constituted very much a basis for the drafting of the VNR. And the report that we published in March 2021, together with the NRP, became more of a verification of or validation that no big developments had been lost or needed to be complemented. So from Statistics Sweden's side, we didn't really have to do anything extra this year because of the VNR. We just adjusted the 2021 review to fit and to be fit to use as the statistical annex. And at one point, we provided some materials for the layout people for diagram construction. So this is what the statistical annex looks like. We have a short text focusing on progress since 2015 for every goal, and then all the indicators that can be communicated in any form, really, in simple tables. So concluding, I would say it was really easy for us to produce the statistical annex this year, and the reasons I would say were the success factors is the continuous dialogue that we have between government offices and Statistics Sweden, and also continuous dialogue, of course, around with other actors, and the sort of continuous statistical reviews that we each year do something, that we have from all the reviews concluded kind of or made sort of strong or simple in a way conclusions to pick up on. Independent statistical follow-up, of course, I think is really, really important, and also the flexibility that we see from these government assignments. That was the end, but I can see that have questions in the chat from Claire.
Yeah, we are going to have a Q&A session after the presentations of these part of the VNRs. So at the end of these 4 presentations of VNRs, we are going to address some of the questions. Also, if you want, you can answer the questions on the chat.
Okay, thanks, Karen. So thank you.
Okay, thank you and congratulations, Sweden, for the work done from previous years, and many thanks, of course, Sarah, for sharing with us the experience so far. A special note about your focus in 2021 on the Leave No One Behind, that is a cross-cutting line of the 2030 agenda, and has also been a topic of discussion of previous IAEG meetings. The previous open meeting was about all the approaches in the statistical production to address the issues in disaggregation of data that are quite related to the Leave No One Behind. And also, I take note of the continuous dialogue that you have with the other institution and the statistical annex that you are producing regularly, who is also recognized as a good practice when doing VNRs. With this, I'm now going to welcome to the speakers of Egypt, Dr. Rehan Rizik, head of the modeling unit from the Ministry of Planning, and Dr. Mona Esab, head of the SDGs unit at the Ministry of Planning too. So Egypt, over to you, please.
Thank you, Karen. Many thanks for the kind invitation. I'm really glad to participate today at the IAEG-SDG meeting and speak about the third Egypt VNR 2020. We're going to start with, next please. I'm going to start with speaking about the outreaches of data that we have this year that made us not only to provide our third VNR report after 2016 and 2018, but we also working on updating the Sustainable Development Strategy for 2030. This is because of the economic reforms that has been adopted in Egypt since 2016 and the outbreak of the COVID-19. We also report on the citizen plan, which enhanced the community participation, transparency, and accountability in the relationship between the state and the individual. And I think we are among the few countries in the region, in the main region, that they're going to launch this year at HLPF, their Finance for Development reports, which tackle the whole spectrum of FFD, identifying key priorities and goals. Next, please. So here, actually, I'd love to divide the data that we have into macro and administrative data or micro data, which to a great extent makes us have like a very comprehensive report compared to the previous year, compared to 2023 report. So we're going to have this year a separate chapter on the assessment of economic reforms that has been adopted with IMF since 2016 and how it impacts poverty and inequality and other SDGs indicators. Egypt, as well as per the last IMF report, the position themselves actually they passed this phase, and this was really reflected on the key macroeconomic indicators that we have. And we present the VNR report, which is inflation, GDP, unemployment, budget deficit, and international reserves, which make us actually the only country in the region with positive economic growth during the outbreak of the pandemic in 2020. Passing this phase put us in a position of launching our second phase of structural reforms, which focus mainly on sectoral structural reforms. We focus on three main sectors: agriculture, industry, and the ICT sector, which contribute the largest to the GDP. Finally, we jump due to the existence of the data to the quick reaction of government of Egypt to the pandemic and how they construct a stimulus package, which is constitute nearly 2% of the GDP directed to the vulnerable and hardly hit sectors. And we want to highlight here that we, at the Ministry of Planning and Economic Development, we have a very comprehensive policy tracker tab at the website, our policy tracker website at the Ministry of Planning website, that record all the policies that takes place since the outbreak of the pandemic till now, and it continues. Next, please. Also, for the micro data, we have abundance of surveys that we always conducted every year or every 2 years, like the household income expenditure consumption survey and labor force survey. They are conducted at the individual level, and we do have the economic census, which conducted at the firm level, which help us to improve targeting of programs and initiatives made by the government and see how it assess how it impact the progress toward the SDGs goals. So the Ministry of Planning, along with the UNFPA, they successfully this year produce a system of governorate level reports to document the progress and the efforts towards achieving SDGs at the governorate level or at the local level. We succeeded to report 32 indicators for 11 SDGs to highlight the SDGs that need more intervention at the governorate level or at the local level. Also this year as well, and to reduce poverty and expand the social protection approach, the government of Egypt launched one of its biggest initiatives that called Decent Life Initiative. It aims to improve the quality of life in the poorest rural communities through revamping the infrastructure, improving access to basic services, education, healthcare, and decent jobs. Next, please. So coming to the core of the VNR, the progression towards SDGs goal by goal, which you have like a very comprehensive storytelling chapter that speak about the progression toward SDGs goal by goal. In this chapter, we highlight all the key indicators, the key UN indicators that we usually report on, and if we don't, we work on having boxes that can measure the targets and tailor it on the Egyptian context, and we usually report on. And also in that chapter, we highlight all the government efforts in terms of programs, initiatives, updated strategies for the ministries, interventions that help us measure clearly the progress toward the 17 SDGs. And for the first time, because you have like the huge time to do a good report, and under the recommendation of Excellency, the Minister, Dr. Hala Saeed, the Minister of Planning and Economic Development, we run the participatory approach in order to engage all the stakeholders. We do have like 4 successful consultation sessions, one with the civil society, one with the private sector, one with the UN agencies and the focal points at the ministries, in order to have their insights on how they measure and assess the progress towards the SDGs. And finally, we measured the impact of the COVID-19, and through our partnership with the International Future Studies, with the help of the UNDP, we succeeded to create like 2 main scenarios: the business as usual scenario and the SDG push scenario. The business as usual scenario does not include any government intervention. However, the SDG push scenario includes a lot of government intervention in order to forecast the production of the SDGs indicators for 2030, using those 2 scenarios, one with government intervention and the other without government intervention. Next, please. Coming to the data strengths and limitations, I'd love to recluster the 17 SDGs into 6 main clusters. For the social protection and the quality of life, which includes goal 1, 2, 3, and 4, we succeeded to report on 70% of the UN indicators, and for the tier 3, we are working now on creating proxies to measure the targets. Still, we do have a challenge when it comes to the climate change cluster, particularly for goal 14 and 15. However, in goal 13, we succeeded to report on tier 1 indicators and creating proxies for key tier 2 indicators. But still, 14 and 15, we still need to work more on this. For social justice and equalities, and using the micro data that we have and the surveys that we conduct usually either yearly or biannually, we report on 50% of the indicators. And however, this is 2 goals is considered a challenge when it comes to the progression toward measuring the progression toward achieving the SDGs. However, the government of Egypt now is working hard in order to reduce spatial disparities and empower women and the marginalized group. Coming to the infrastructure and sustainable communities clusters for 6 and 7, we report on more than 70% of the indicators. Still, we need to work more on goal 11. Industry and innovation, we report on 70% of the indicators of the UN agencies, and we create proxies for tier 3 as well. Governance and partnership, we report on 45% of the UN indicators. Next, please. Way forward for Ministry of Planning to bridge the data limitation. The ministry is working hard to improve the national strategy of statistics along with CAPMAS, which is the central agency for public mobilization and statistics in Egypt. We start using the GIS and digitalize all the field surveys. We introduce new surveys in order to have more availability of data on reporting on the SDGs indicators. We go for community level surveys and demographic and health family surveys, which stopped since a long time. This year, we are going to conduct the survey as well. We have like a bunch of COVID 19 assessment surveys, either on the firm level or the household livelihood support. And we are working on improving the process of data collection and checks and balances. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And it's really interesting to see how documentation process are taking place, and also you are recognizing the work with different stakeholders. Again, we see some challenges still with data availability, but Egypt has also showed us some strategies in the way forward. With this now, I would like to welcome to Adriana Cosma, SDG Coordinator and Technical Secretary of the Sdg Commission in Colombia. So, Adriana, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Karen. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon for everybody. I'm Adriana Cosma, representing the National Department of Planning, which is in charge with the Secretary of the SDG Commission. My presentation will have two parts, one about the framework of SDG implementation, and the second one more specific about how we use the data for our VNR. If you can, next, please. Thank you. In terms of institutional capacity, the roadmap of the SDG agenda in Colombia, we created the Sdg Commission. This is a high-level body in charge with government the implementation of the SDGs in our country. As you can see, there are 7 public entities in charge with articulation the public initiative and project related with the SDGs. One of these, because of the importance of data, one of these, of course, is DANE, the National Department of Statistics. The director of the National Development Plan Department is the president of the commission, and also the technical secretariat of the SDG. There is in the National Department of Planning. That way was possible to develop an articulate work of this project and initiative to follow and comply with the guidelines established by the National Strategy for the Implementation of SDGs. If you, next one, please, can change. Also, the SDGs agenda have been integrated into the Colombian public policy framework through its main public policy planning tools. So in 2018, in Colombia was issued a medium-term public policy document, compass document. This document contains the national strategy for the implementation of the SDGs. In addition, giving the role played by the National Development Plan to allocate public investment according to the social and economic needs of the country, the SDGs have been included in our current development planning. In that way, each chapter of the plan defines a set of monitoring indicators that were aligned with the SDG targets. The public policy document compass have 4 lines. One, it's about the follow-up scheme, and the VNR is one of these products. The second one, it's the statistical strengthening plan. We are working with DANE is responsible. The Department of Statistics is responsible of this line, but we are working through the technical committee. In addition, Colombia is working on measuring the integration of SDGs on the local and territorial plans. And the fourth one, recognizing the importance of non-governmental stakeholders engagement. The public policy document have this dedicated line. So in that way, the SDG agenda, it's not only a government agenda. We recognize that it's an agenda that requires the participation, the commitment, and all the efforts of each actors, government, but also civil society, private sector representant. Next one, please. Recognizing the importance of relevant, opportune, and quality statistics standard information, and of course, understanding that the implementation of the SDG cannot occur without a real follow-up and evaluation of the progress. As I mentioned, the second line of the SDG strategy document compass refer precisely to the availability of data. As I mentioned already, the entity responsible for this line is the National Department of Statistics, which in the same time is part of the SDG Technical Committee and is one of the 7 members of the Sdg Commission, the high-level body. So for us, it's an achievement. It's again having both in terms of institutionally and an exclusive line for the information system of the SDG, and also to count with the presence of DANE, of the Statistical Department, in this technical committee and in the high-level commission. This give us not only information to have a good VNR, but also give us the opportunity to search these new mediation, new indicators, which were not available at the time of adoption of SDG agenda and our national system of indicators in 2018. Next one, please. This is a short resume of our indicators reporting process. This feed our web page, I was saying in Spanish, ods.gov.co. DANE is working on receiving and process and verify the indicators, and both DANE and National Department of Planning made this communication with the entities in charge with the indicators, validate the data, and upload on the website. In our planning, the final of April each year is the deadline of counting with the indicators. Next one. Okay. Now I am going to refer specifically how the data was been the core of on the construction of our VNR. Next one, please. Thank you. Colombia will going to present a review of the SDG for the third time. The title of this year VNR is Accelerating the Implementation for the Sustainable Recovery. And the main theme of this report is how to continue advancing on the implementation of the SDGs in this new background of challenges due to COVID-19 pandemic, and how turning the SDGs agenda into opportunity for the sustainable recovery. The next one, please. Next one. Okay. The voluntary report, which will be presenting on July 12th. This is the date dedicated to our country on the framework of the United Nations High-Level Political Forum. Will present different progress that occur both in compliance with the system of indicators, but also will present progress on the general implementation of the SDG agenda. On one hand, the available statistical information was included to monitoring the indicators defined in the national strategy for the implementation of the SDG agenda, only for the group of 9 prioritized SDG for this year's review. But also we have not stopped only to include data information from the national monitoring system. The VNR includes reference about the new indicators worked by DANE in the framework of the working group with the different agencies of the United Nations system. Foregoing is complemented, the VNR is complemented with a quantitative information available on the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and the fulfillment of the SDG in Colombia, and how the different actors, the different entities respond to these challenges through account of the action that the country has undertaken for the reactivation. And next one. Okay. Recognizing the role and the importance of the Alliance, the chapter, leaving no one behind is a common task. Precisely highlights the contribution that have been made in the country by different stakeholders, from the private sector, from the civil society, from the international organization, from the academy, the research and think tank center. These are some of the example of data that we use and included in our VNR. All these inputs, all this data, all this information, we obtain in two manners. Was the result of work coordinated with different stakeholders. And for example, I refer to SDG Corporate Tracker. It's a tool that we have to measure. We launched last year in order to measure the private sector contribution to the SDG. But also we obtain this kind of information, additional information for the VNR through participatory construction process. And in the presentation there is one example of one working group, a space to obtain this participatory construction for consolidating the report. So in this manner, we consider that we recognize the efforts that the National Statistic Department was made in not only with reporting the indicators of the national system, but also to have in this VNR we included already because the VNR is already done. We included 11 new indicators. And also we count with this kind of different, not official, different data and information from the other actors and stakeholders. In this way, we recognize that counting with data and information is important not only for the national reviews, for the VNR elaboration process, but also for a real mobilization of stakeholders and resources for the SDG based on evidence. This is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Adriana, and all the speakers of this session. Regarding the time, we are going to move forward now to a small session of questions from the chat. So I will ask to my colleagues from UNSD for help reading out from the chat some questions for our presenters. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. This is Heather Page with UNSD. So a lot of the chats have actually been, a lot of the questions have been answered. So we're just going to select a few. The first question will be to Malaysia. Can you describe work you are doing to collect information on Goal 16? And also, has it started? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So Malaysia, could you please respond to this question?
Thank you for the question. I think I've already answered that one also in the chat. But for Goal 16, we are all going to include it in our mixed survey, MICS survey, and the survey is going to be undertaken this year.
Okay, thank you so much. And just a reminder that all presentations are going to be available at the website of this meeting in case you need more information. And now I'm giving the floor to my colleague, Kara Williams.
Oh, sorry, Karen. Sorry, we had just a couple more questions still, one for each of the presenters. Sorry. The next question was for Sweden. Could you please elaborate on flexibility as one of the success factors behind Sweden's VNR 2021?
Yes, thank you. I would say flexibility as a success factor is perhaps referring more to the continuous work on statistics, sort of leading up to the VNR and the statistics in the VNR. I would say that flexibility for Statistics Sweden to decide on how to do the annual reviews. For example, we decided to focus on the principle of leaving no one behind, and decided to do that in a slightly different way than our usual review, as we found that to be one of the challenges for Sweden. Also a flexibility with regards to developing of national indicators when we feel they are needed, of course in dialogue with other stakeholders, and also the fact that we had a lot to build on. The continuous reviews gives us a flexibility in regards to sort of deciding together with the government offices on how to proceed in the VNR process, and to base that on statistics. So that's basically what I meant by flexibility.
Thank you. The next question will be to Egypt. You mentioned that the social justice and equalities indicators were challenges. How is Egypt addressing this as part of the leaving no one behind principle? Thank you.
Thank you. Since 2019, the government of Egypt is forced to launch initiatives, big initiatives with a huge fund. I already mentioned one of them, which is Decent Climate Initiative. It's interventions that go directly to the rural communities to make sure that they have an access to basic services, they have adequate schools, adequate clinics. So this is one of the initiatives that actually could affect Goal 5 and Goal 10 as well. Also, there is a big one also. I think it's to be the Egyptian pound that goes for family development. It's a family development initiative. It's targeting women aged from 15 to 45. It works on 5 pillars, related to empowerment, legislation, with cultural awareness, education one. So there are like targeting programs targeting the people with disabilities, the elderly group, women, rural communities. That I think during the phase of preparing our first Egypt VNR, we're going to have like a huge impact, particularly carrying out RCTs in order to know exactly the magnitude of the impacts of the programs on the targets and the programs for this kind of big initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The last question would be to our representative from Colombia. You've mentioned that you managed to measure the private sector's impact on the SDGs. What indicators or tools did you use? Thank you.
Precisely, I was text on the chat. Thank you. We launched the Sdg Corporate Tracker. This is a platform, web form, based on green standards on sustainability, Green Report Institute. So the each company register and make the reports through this online form. This form is organized by economic, social, and environment data, and also we have a COVID effects part. So this is our tools, the Sdg Corporate Tracker. This is a platform that we launched with UNDP and Green Institute, the National Department of Planning, with these two entities.
Okay, thank you so much to everyone. And with this now, I think that we are ready to give the floor to my colleague, Cara Williams from Canada. Over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Karen. And thank you to all the presenters for the very interesting first session. I think that the VNRs are a critical component of SDG monitoring more widely. And as we can see, how national statistics offices contribute to VNRs in terms of data and statistics differs across the countries. But a key common factor is that the NSO plays a critical role in reporting and monitoring of progress on SDGs. And so with that, I'm going to introduce our new session, which is best practices in SDG monitoring, national, regional, and stakeholder experiences and initiatives. And we're going to begin with the experience of Grenada in collecting and compiling SDG indicators. And Ms. Kenita Paul from the Central Statistical Office of Grenada, I will turn the floor over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. I am Kenita Paul from the Statistics Office, Grenada. Grenada is very grateful for this opportunity to share our experience in compiling the SDGs indicators. Now, my presentation outline is as follows. I will first speak about the CARICOM core set of indicators, the challenges faced in compiling the indicators, steps taken to address the data gaps, lessons learned, and briefly touch on our national plan. Next, please. Grenada is a member of CARICOM, and as a member of the CARICOM community, Statistics Grenada is guided by the decisions made at the CARICOM level as it relates to the compilation of the SDG indicators, and also for the direction going forward in that regard. Now, when it comes to the SDG compilation, our main focus has been on compiling the 125 CARICOM core indicators. Now, at the 39th meeting at the Standing Committee of Caribbean Statisticians, it was recommended that a core set of indicators should be the starting point for CARICOM small island developing states, and countries should aim to migrate to the full set in a specific time frame. To determine the core set of indicators, the technical working group, comprising a representative from each of the stats office from the region, was established. Next, please. Now, the indicators were chosen based on 4 criteria. The first being, the goal should be linked to the national and regional planning program and priorities for development and provide a robust measure of progress as it relates to development for CARICOM countries. The second being the ability of the indicator to measure the SDGs in the context of the diverse population groups in CARICOM, which embodies the principle of leaving no one behind. The third, the core indicators must reflect the unique vulnerabilities of CARICOM small island developing states. Even though as a region we're close, we all are unique. We all have unique characteristics. And the last being, they must allow for comparability at the national, regional, and international level. Next, please. Now, I must say, however, that even though our main focus is on collecting the CARICOM core set of indicators, we also compile some of the recommended global set for data, which is available. Now, prior to us compiling the indicators, a national assessment of the statistical capacity was carried out, and that was through consultation with all stakeholders within the national system. During that consultation, data sources were identified from both within and outside the statistical system. We also looked at the requirements for compiling the indicators, and some of the challenges were also highlighted during that process. Generally speaking, the Statistics Office encountered and still continues to encounter many challenges and constraints relative to the production of the SDGs. As we all know, the compilation of the SDGs necessitates new data sources that require new survey methods. and there is a lack of finance or a competition for financial resources, especially now as there has been a significant decrease in funding from international funding agencies for data collection. There is also a deficiency of institutional capacity. In other words, scarcity of skilled staff in the line ministries. There is also a high turnover of staff. Now, what we notice, even though an officer is trained in a particular area, given the dynamics of the public service, what you'll find is that the officer is moved to another department or ministry, and with that movement goes with the transfer of the knowledge that they would have received. There is also a deficiency of the institutional capital, in other words, scarcity of the skilled staff in the line ministries. In addition, there is a shortage of technical expertise, especially in the new identified data sources that are outside of the statistical system. What we also notice, there's a lack of fully developed infrastructure to support the networking within the line ministries and also outside of the statistical system. Another area is the huge data gaps. What we notice is that where the data exists, it is not fully disaggregated at the level required in many cases. What we have also realized is that to meet the demands of the SDGs, new technologies must be adopted and geospatial data must be integrated with conventional sources, which is not the case in many instances. And last but not least, COVID-19, which has resulted in considerable changes to our society, the economy, and the environment, which encompasses the three dimensions of sustainable development. Next slide, please. Now, notwithstanding the various challenges mentioned, the SDGs has also presented many opportunities for the Statistics Office. In 2018-2019, we conducted the Survey of Living Conditions. The preliminary report is currently being finalized. From this survey, we will be producing 25 indicators with technical assistance from the World Bank. The office will be conducting the National Population and Housing Census in September of this year. We currently in the process of planning and finalizing, and some of the indicators will be generated from the results obtained from the census. I must also say that we have also incorporated geospatial technology for the upcoming census, which is the first for us. There's plans to give greater focus on environmental statistics within the office. A statistician has been assigned to this area. Before, no one was responsible for that area. So a strong focus will be to ensure sustainability of data collection in environmental statistics to inform the National Sustainable Development Plan and the SDGs. The office is also in collaboration with UN Women in undertaking a project to include time use questions in the labor force survey. We do quarterly labor force and the census to produce the related SDGs pertaining to time use. And now in 2018, the office conducted the Women Health and Life Experience Survey in collaboration with UN Women. And from that survey, the office was able to compile indicators 5.21, 5.22, 5.31. Also, there's currently an initiative with the Statistics Office, the Ministry of Social Development, and UN Women called Spotlight. And it's designed to collect for data collection, for capturing data on violence against women to be used as a proxy to the relevant SDG indicators. Also, there's also a project in progress with the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, and the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, the OECS, to include a model to measure food insecurity in the labor force survey and to produce the related SDG indicators. And not least, there's the OECS data for decision making being conceptualized to focus on statistics modernization, institutional strengthening, and data production to improve the capacity of the national statistical system to produce data and the increase in the range, quality, and the quantity of data produced, including the SDGs. So a lot has been done in progress in order for us to compile the necessary SDG indicators. Next slide, please. Some of the lessons learned. The national statistical system needs to invest in capacity development, given the new demand of the SDGs. And I think that's where the trust is now, to develop the capacity within the system. Also, data literacy must be enhanced at all levels of decision making. Coming together of the different data communities of producers and users is also important, like having user-producer seminars. What we also learned is harnessing the power of technology and other innovative tools are essential in the fulfilling the data demands. The integration of geospatial information with statistics and data is of utmost importance for the SDG. And as I would have stated, we would have incorporated geospatial technology in the census going forward. Also, the compilation and collecting of the SDGs demand innovative ways to produce and apply data and statistics in addressing the multifaceted challenges of social sustainable development. Next slide, please. I thought it's necessary to highlight the CARICOM indicators. I will not go into detail, but for goal 1, it was selected to be part of the CARICOM core, of which Grenada produces 3. Those that are highlighted in red are the indicators we will obtain from the survey of living conditions that we would have conducted in 2018-2019. And those that are highlighted in green are those that we will get from FAO. Goal 2, 6 was selected and Grenada produces 3. Goal 3, 25 was selected and Grenada produces 13. And this is because of our robust system for collecting health data. Goal 4, 8 was selected and Grenada produces 5. Goal 5, 7 selected, Grenada produces 2. Next slide, please. Goal 6, 4 selected, Grenada produces 2. Goal 7, only 1 was selected and Grenada produces that indicator. Goal 8, 10 was selected and Grenada produces 6. Goal 9, 7 selected and Grenada produces 4. Goal 10, 4 selected and Grenada produces 1. Goal 11, 9 selected. However, Grenada did not produce any. Next slide, please. Goal 12, 1 was selected, but it is not produced by Grenada. Goal 13, 2 selected, but none is produced by Grenada. Goal 14, 2 selected and they both produce. Goal 15, 5 selected, 1 is produced. Goal 16, 13 selected, 6 is produced. And goal 17, 16 selected, of which Grenada produces 11. Next slide, please. Now, this is a pictorial presentation, I must say, of Grenada National Sustainable Development Plan, which is built on the key pillars of sustainable development, economy, society, and the environment, and supports 8 national outcomes and 3 strategic national goals. Next slide, please. Sorry. Yeah. They are high human and social development, putting people at the center of sustainable development, vibrant, dynamic, competitive economy with supporting climate and resilient infrastructure, and environmental sustainability and security. So this just gives a pictorial representation of our National Sustainable Development Plan. Next slide, please. The next slide shows how the SDGs are aligned with our national goals and outcomes and strategic actions. Now, all 17 goals are aligned to the national goals and outcomes, as can be seen on the screen. Now, next slide. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kenita. Super interesting presentation there. It's interesting to hear about the 125 CARICOM core indicators and the criteria that sets out for what those indicators were, and it reflects a unique situation of the CARICOM Island states. And I really appreciate the important challenges that you've noted, as well as the extensive list of initiatives that have been undertaken to try to address some of the data gaps. Thanks again for sharing your lessons learned, and these are important for us all to take note of, because it is the sharing of these experiences that can help us move forward.
Thank
you. With that, we'll go to the next speaker, who will discuss the Guide to Measuring and Reporting on Global Indicators in the UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework. So Veronica Simon from the UN Population Fund, and Alan Bojanic from the UN Food and Agricultural Organization of Colombia. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. Good evening to some of you also, all over the world. I will be making the introduction, and then my colleague Veronica Simán will follow on the results and the different achievements that we have made so far with this guide. This guide was promoted by the DNP, the National Planning Department, in conjunction with the National Statistics Department, the DANE. So we have quite a solid framework for measuring the different SDGs. Next, please. Is it possible to move to the next slide, please? I cannot do it myself. Hello. Is there someone that can help me to move the next slide? I cannot do it myself.
Oh.
Yes, is it possible to move to the next slide? This is just the first page. How can I move to the next slide?
Just give us
a second. We're checking with our.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Because if I could do it, I have done it. Well, in the meantime, as we can arrange this technical problem, to mention the origin of this guide, definitely is a common effort between the National Planning Department and DANE, and of course the UN team here in Colombia. And that's based, of course, first of all, in the common framework, in the common development framework. And on the one hand, on the other hand, we are also dealing with the national policy. In 2018, there was a decree launching the strategy for the implementation of SDG in Colombia was mentioned by our colleague Adriana Cosma. And in addition to that, of course, we have the agenda adopted in the General Assembly. So we have these three pillars, let's say, that we're trying to articulate in order to have a common guide for measuring the different SDGs overall. Now we can move to the second page, if it's possible. Well, this is just to mention the content of this presentation. I will just to discuss briefly on the origin, the contents, and the main results. And point 2 and point 3 will be undertaken by my colleague Veronica Simán soon after I make this introduction. Next, please. Next, please. Thank you very much. This is what I was just mentioning, the three pillars for the guide, you know, the SDG goals, the implementation, the national policy, and of course, the agreement, the common country agreement, and the Sustainable Development Common Framework that we have already agreed with government, and that's based on three pillars. And next, please. Then the three big pillars of the common development, sustainable development framework with the country of Colombia and the UN has these three pillars. And the first one is what we call the pillar of peace, that is mainly to stabilize the territories more affected by violence, particularly regarding the peace process here in Colombia. The second one is to reduce the vulnerability of the migrant population of Colombian returnees and the host population. This particularly has to do with migrants also from Venezuela. And the third one is to accelerate the implementation of SDG as catalyst. And as a common framework across the board, we have population, we have rights, gender issues, ethnic approaches, and all these should lead us to Colombia being able to consolidate lagging territories, to turn migration into development opportunity, and advance in the fulfillment of SDGs, and of course, implementation of the agenda. Next, please. Well, this is just one of the pillars, the pillar on accelerating the SDGs catalyst, which has 6 results that we are trying to measure. You know, I mean, this guide is particularly focusing on measuring the 3 pillars, but mainly this is the central for what we're discussing today, which is, as you can see, this measurement, the gender equality, sustainable production, and food and nutrition security, the orange economy related particularly and employability, particularly related to cultural, the economy of culture, the economy of innovation, the economy of young people developing new business, and so on. And then the planning at subnational level, supporting particularly the different provinces of Colombia in their development efforts, particularly in the planning efforts. Then the UN Interagency Group for SDG, in this case, the Population Fund and FAO are responsible for this pillar of accelerating. This is in a rotative way, then other agencies will take this monitoring on the implementation of the guide, particularly for the different SDGs, so we can really have a very close, and we already have applied this guide. This guide is something that is in process, so we can really know how far are we advancing the SDG and how far are we from achieving the SDGs here in Colombia. With this on, I will pass to my colleague Veronica Siman, to show us the different steps and also the results that so far we have achieved. Over to you, Veronica. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Alan. Hello, everyone. I will share with you the roadmap we have prepared for measuring all prioritized SDGs. Can you please show the next slide? Yes, thank you. UNFPA is the lead agency of the Task Force on Measuring SDG Indicators, where we work very closely with DANE, the Statistics Office, the RCO, as well as with other 14 UN agencies. This task force corresponds to the first of the 5 circles in the previous slide. Next, these 7 steps for measuring the global SDG indicators. I will not go over all the steps in the guide, but I will highlight the first 3. First, in the UNSDCF, we committed or we prioritized 106 indicators for the period 2020 to 2023. Second, we are analyzing the information available to see how much further we need to go in order to measure these indicators. And third, we must develop work plans to advance in measuring the indicators. So we need to accelerate these as we are only 9 years away from 2030. The measuring phase should be over by now. So we are putting the accelerator on. Next. Together with the government of Colombia, we are implementing the barometer to monitor the implementation of the work plans for each of the prioritized indicators. The barometer is inspired on ECLAC's regional experience, the Colombian experience, as well as exchanges with involved UN agencies. And as mentioned by Adriana Cosma earlier, it has been included in the VNR. As you can see in this slide, the barometer has 4 summary categories and 17 criteria. First, we analyze sources of information and we move forward down these 4 categories. The idea is that we have all information to produce the indicator. Next. I will now share with you the main results that we achieved in 2020 with the guide, what we will be working on in 2021, and present the main challenges that we have identified. Next. In 2020, we prioritized 65 of the 106 indicators. And the different UN agencies worked very closely with the government on these indicators. And this graph shows detailed progress. We have 4 groups of bars which show progress in measuring indicators through at 3 different points in time. We can see that for each group of bars, we have data for February, for June, and for November 2020. And with Group A, we are referring to those indicators that have already been produced. And as you can see on this slide, during the year, we were able to move from 12 to 34 indicators that are ready to be produced. 10 of them have already a completed methodological note. Group B bars refer to indicators that have not been produced yet, but that may be produced with existing information. And we've been able to move from 14 to 18 indicators throughout 2020. Group C refers to those indicators for which there is some information available, but there is a need for more information before they can be produced. We have been able to move from 24 to 11, and this is the group where we have seen the most acceleration during last year. And Group D, these are the main challenges. There is no information available to produce these indicators, but we have been able to move from 15 to only 2. So now there are only 2 indicators for which there is no information available for producing them. Next. Please, thank you. During 2021, we expect to be able to work on 50 indicators. To date, we have already completed work plans for 30 of them. And we are focusing first on the promotion of the management and implementation of the work plans for these indicators. Second, we are estimating the cost for measuring the indicators. And then third, how to generate periodic sustainability for their measurement. That is, that we can measure them now, but that also in the future, we will be able to update this information so that we can monitor progress in socioeconomic and environmental terms. And next, please. And this is the last slide. We are referring to the 3 challenges. I mean, there are many challenges, but we are focusing on 3 of them, and challenges that we face when measuring and trying to produce indicators. First, the gap analysis to leave no one behind. This means that we need to be able to disaggregate data to analyze the situation of most excluded groups. So it's not only having the indicator and being able to measure, but being able to measure in a disaggregated way so we can look at those most left behind. Second, as we all know and has been mentioned earlier, COVID has presented new complexities, and we need to consider how it is affecting progress achieved to date and what its impact is on the achievement on the goals by 2030. And last, we need to have and analyze the data in order to make policy recommendations and advocacy in order to accelerate the achievement of SDGs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Veronica and Alan. The Common Development Framework for Colombia is and the 3 pillars: acceleration of implementation, stability, and reduction of vulnerabilities, is an innovative way to link policy and the supporting data necessary for developing policy and strategies. And this is a really good example of collaboration across UN entities and the NSO in a country. I like the barometer. It's a good follow-up tool on measurement, and it is clear that enormous progress was made in a very short time, as the barometer showed. So we're going to move now to our 3rd presentation of the session. Mrs. Karen Lindo from the Swedish Board of Agriculture, who will discuss the method for national follow-up on the food loss indicator. Karen, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And hi, everyone. I'm very pleased to be invited to this forum to share and learn about the important follow-up on reaching the goals in the agenda. And my name is Karin Lindo, and I work at the Swedish Board of Agriculture. And I will give you my experience on setting up a method for national follow-up on food losses in Sweden. And this work is done in a government assignment that we have in reducing food loss and waste. Can take next slide, please. And next to the animation also, yeah. And I guess many of you know about the global food loss and waste goal, the SDG 12.3. And by 2030, half per capita global food waste at the retail and consumer level, and reduce food losses along production and supply chains, including post-harvest losses. And it's the last part and the food loss indicator that is my focus in this method. And so there are two indicators, and this food loss indicator, it reaches from primary production and up to, but not including, retail level. And the advice from the FAO is for each country to choose a basket of 10 main commodities and measure progress in reduction towards 2030. Next slide, please. And we also have national goals for food loss and waste reduction in Sweden, and they are supposed to accelerate the work towards the SDG. And the one about food losses follows by 2025, an increased share of the food production should reach retailers and consumers. So they are quite the same, but another goal year, 2025. So we want to contribute with data to follow up the SDG, but also follow up our national goal on food loss reduction. And last but not least, we want to know more about losses and resources and how to take action. Next slide, please. So what we did was at first to gather the most experienced researchers in this field in Sweden. And then we formed a reference group with the researchers and key persons at authorities and agencies. And we discussed the choice of commodities, not only the main commodities in volume or value, but also in relation to climate impact and the experience from previous studies, taking into account what can be made of the losses by products or side streams, or what you like to call them, the potential from them, and also included different types of products, and both fresh, just-in-time products and products that can be stored, to learn more about their different challenges. And we then decided on 8 commodities. It's beef, pork, milk, seafood, wheat, potatoes, carrots, and strawberries. And we might add more commodities, but we start with these 8 due to time and budget. Next slide, please. And we then wanted to get a status on how other countries, what work has already been done, and also interviewed countries nearby Sweden, how they follow up or plan to follow up food losses. And this background study found that there are valuable work done in other countries and in the countries close to us, and projects, for example, in the Nordic countries and the UK and the Netherlands and others. But also there are very few countries, as we know of in this study, then that have a system to continuously follow up food losses at the national level. And then we gave researchers also the task to suggest methods in 2 levels for each of the commodity and their production chain. And it's methods in a basic follow-up, looking for the existing data. What can we use that we already have in statistics or animal registry and such, and also an advanced follow-up using suggesting field studies and extra data collection, interviews, and surveys. Next slide, please. And then we had a big meeting with all the farmers organizations and actors in Sweden for these 8 products along the food chain. And at least 15 different farmers and industry associations have been involved. And this meeting was very important for reaching consensus, since food losses is quite a new thing as a concept, and sharing views on losses in different sectors. And there are both similarities, of course, and different challenges. And in general, the organizations saw benefits on working with food loss reduction, since it can both bring profit and reduce environmental and climate impact. And it was very important for us to ensure them that we try to use existing data when possible, and that we wanted to have a co-created process, finding ways to calculate and estimate, and not looking for blaming farmers or producers, but looking for potential for improvement to use their resources better. Since farmers are often affected by the requirements later on the chain from buyers and business practices and models, and of course very exposed to weather, pests, diseases, and such. So the cooperation with company organizations was very important, and also for making companies willing to participate in studies and answer the surveys. Next slide, please. And after some more meetings together with the researchers and company organizations and farmers, we landed on an approach that is described by this overview, this picture. So we will use existing data as much as possible, but also do interviews, data collecting when there are no existing data available. And we have started to follow up this summer, and we will do it again in 2024, 2025, and hopefully again further on towards 2030. And the quote is right, summarizes this well, and it will not be easy and it will be a learning process, but it's a step forward. And we can take the next slide, please. And this table shows an overview on the approach for each product flow. And the follow-up will be made during 2 years, since the vegetables that are grown this year needs to be measured also in storage and end of storage during spring next year. And all the results will be presented in a report in September 2022. And it will show the amounts of losses and the destinations. What do you do with it instead? Are the products left in field, or do you use it as feed to animals or as waste? And I want to highlight that we are, in most cases, we have choose to avoid service, especially to farmers, because we know from experience that there is a risk for underestimation these things, and that we don't want to trouble them too much with paperwork. And instead, we focus on interviews by phone and some field measurements, and of course use statistics, existing statistics when available. We have some studies already done in Sweden and also in Nordic studies. For example, we know that about 9% of the beef production, both beef and milk production, of the slaughtered weight does not leave the farm and enter the food chain. And we know that the losses in wheat production are quite small, but we also know that there are some problems with the pre-harvest due to wildlife damage, and that there are harvests that you can't harvest. And a lot of potatoes and carrots are sorted out due to size and appearance, due to consumer requirements. And some of these losses could be avoided, and some are probably inevitable due to biological factors and others. So next slide, please. And the key issues that we have discussed is what is food losses, to get this consensus about the definition. And instead of losing ourselves in this work in the tricky definitions, we decided to have an open approach. And in the studies and surveys, we ask what was intended to become food, but did not continue the food chain. And our thoughts is that then we will get the whole picture of the resources and losses and can draw the conclusions afterwards, and of course report in different ways, not excluding anything beforehand. And we have also discussed a lot about how to get data that are show the total of Sweden. And for the field studies, looking at how much of the produce was left in field when harvesting, for example, we will only be able to do case studies and not national data, but we will also add with interviews. But data from sorting and storing on farm and at packeries, as well as at mills and abattoirs, and dairies and food production, we expect to get data that can represent total production in Sweden. And the SDG measures losses after harvest, catch and slaughter, but we will include pre-harvest and pre-slaughter losses when we have existing data, like animal registry or other natural investigations. Although we might not include that in what we report for the SDG, but it's important for us and we can use it on a national level working on reduction. And my last picture, next slide, please. So national follow-up or measuring on food losses, as well as measuring losses and waste on company level, is a learning process and will increase the knowledge. And that is very important to be able to work on reduction. And our experience is that it's important to listen to the farmers and the food companies and their organizations, because they know the production and know their challenges and opportunities. And the report, Food Losses in Sweden, it has a summary in English, so it's available now, but we're also translating the full report to English, so it will be done in the end of summer. It will be in English. So if you have any information in this field or are questions, please contact me. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. You know, it's great to see that national targets for food loss and food waste, the indicator, I think that's great. And forming the researcher reference group is a good way to harness that expertise of experts. I note that the government of Sweden seems to have a strong and effective relationship with university researchers. And I think that that has been a really good accelerator to enhance the measurement of SDGs for Sweden. Of course, including businesses and farmers in the discussion ensures buy-in and enhanced understanding. And the quote that you provided is very, very apt. I think we need to start somewhere, so we should not be afraid of taking those first steps. And as they say, don't let perfection be the enemy of the good. So we have one more presentation, and that is an update on the IAEG SDG Working Group of Measurement and Development Support. So Ms. Anne Lisbeth Brattvåg from Norway is the co-chair of that group. And I will turn the floor to you, Anne Lisbeth, for you to give us your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And yes, there is my slides as well. And hello to everyone at the meeting now. I'm co-chair. I'm from Statistics Norway. I'm co-chair with Camilo Mendes from Colombia, the Statistical Office in Colombia. And I give you a report, a status report of where we are now. And I think I would start with the objective of the working group. Just so you can understand what we are working with. And our objectives was or is to further develop and refine the measurement of development support under the target 17.3, mobilize additional financial resources for developing countries from multiple sources. That's the indicator. We are going to consider different components of development support, such as other official flows, private finance, international public goods for sustainable development, and South-South and triangular cooperation. The working group will consider, but is not limited by work already conducted. We will develop a final proposal, including the various components in the methodological work for where we were able to define and test the validity and feasibility of the indicators. Next slide, please. And two other objectives in the terms of reference is to develop recommendation for the implementation of the measurement, and to make recommendation or suggestions on further work required if we at the end of this current 2-year terms, if we don't have a solution now. The working group was established May last year. We had the first meeting the 27th of May, and we have since that have monthly meetings, and the 12th meeting was held earlier in June, 8th to 10th June. All the meetings have been held have been virtual. There are 21 member countries participating in the working group, both from statistical offices and also with members from the development agencies in the countries. In addition, we have 4 observer countries. UNCTAD is and OECD is also participating. Next, please. Next slide, please. So we have now, during the last year, worked towards a core proposal, what to include. And here is some issues where we have gained strong support. And the majority is in favor, or a strong majority, everyone has more or less, is in favor of only including flows that promote sustainable development. And we have worked with the criteria for operationalizing operationalizing this sustainable development, and it's broadly agreed on. And one important issue is that recipient countries can object to the characterization as supporting sustainable development if they think it is not relevant. We have also agreed on showing data by recipient countries only. We also will give gross flows. However, some countries also want to include net flows, but we don't know yet where this will end, but gross flows will at least be shown. And another important issue is that we will make separate indicators for the different flows. And this is due to the Addis Ababa Action Agenda, which recognizes that there are different benefits, risks, and impacts associated with different financing flows. And this means we should avoid aggregating them. Next slide, please. So to the selection of the flows. We have official grants, official concessional and non-concessional loans, which we want to include. There are some exemptions, and that is we want to exclude debt reliefs, in donor refugee costs, general administrative costs not allocated to specific development activities. And for peace and security, we have proposed to just cover not cover expenditures beyond what is reportable to ODA. We have proposed to include foreign direct investment, as this is normally a component that will enhance growth and innovation in the recipient country. We are still discussing mobilized private finance, and as we see it now, this will probably be included as a memorandum item. We have discussed private grants. There is a strong support for including private grants, but we have issues with availability of data. Next slide, please. Another important thing is South-South cooperation, and also international public goods. When it comes to South-South cooperation, the working group set down a subgroup, and this subgroup is a subgroup with participation from, should I say, South-South, from the South-South area, and and it's chaired by India, and this subgroup has been working on developing a conceptual framework for the reporting. And the subgroup is expected to indicate the need for further methodological work and pilot studies. The conclusion of the subgroup will be part of the overall proposal. When it comes to international public goods, the task force recognized the importance of the international public goods for sustainable development, but there are aspects with it which means that we probably conclude that we will provide recommendation or suggestion on further work required, and that this is necessary before including anything on international public goods into the indicator. Next slide, please. And I think that is about the timetable. This is my last slide. And this is what will happen in the rest of 2021. We will have our 13th meeting in July. We will complete the draft proposal. And in August, September, there will be an open consultation on this draft. In September, we will have a new meeting, and then we will review the results from the consultation and complete the proposal, addressing also open issues. In October, we have planned to submit the submission and review of the proposal should be taken by the IAEG-SDGs. And in November, for the last 15th meeting, then we will give input to the IAEG report going to the UNSC, Statistical Commission. And December, then the submission to the Commission report containing the final proposal will be included. So perhaps I should add something which was not on my slides, but since I've been listening to what I've been saying, and that is about data availability and data sources. And one important thing which we have discussed is that we will not or we will try to use data already available and not ask for new reporting. Except for South-South cooperation, there must be a reporting scheme, since that is not available today. But for the rest of the flows, we propose to use data, donor data, for instance, already available in databases all over the world. So the recipient countries which will have these indicators, they will have their challenge or their resources will be to verify the data in the databases. That might be a big job, but that is at least the way we are thinking now. And with this, I go back to the chair, to the host.
Thank you very much, Anne Elizabeth. And on behalf of the IAEG, thank you to the group for the impressive progress made on the development of this indicator. And given that COVID kind of threw a bit of a wrench into much of the work, it's heartening to hear of the progress made despite the pandemic. So thank you very much again. And I'm going to turn it back to Heather from UNSD. She's going to kind of walk us through. We're a little bit behind on our schedule, so she's going to walk us through a bit of the questions and how we're going to move from here. So Heather, over to you.
Thank you so much, Kara. So a lot of the questions during this last session have actually been answered during in the chat, but we do have one last question for the last presenter, who obviously could not have answered a question while she was giving her presentation. I just want to note for those who are watching on the YouTube channel who cannot see the chat, that we'll post this information on the meeting website as well, so that way there's a chance to see kind of that interaction and those questions and answers and resources that are being shared. So please do make sure you add in any additional information that you think is important. So the question for the last presenter is there an accepted list of international public goods and information monitoring of its supply and demand? Thank you.
No, I would say that one of the challenges with international public goods is that there is no definition available. And this must be sorted out before we can propose to include it in an indicator. So unfortunately, well, you have the TOSD, the Total Official Support for Sustainable Development, the project there. They have set up a proposal for defining international public good, but it's not a common accepted definition. So that is a challenge. Is that enough, or was there more in the question I needed to address?
That was the full question. Thank you so much. Back to you, Kara.
Thank you, Heather. So during registration, we received a number of questions from some of the participants. We don't have time to go through all of them, but Karen, the other co-chair, and I are going to answer a couple of the questions. So I will start. The first question we received was, how can we integrate public and private sector SDG efforts? So I think this goes beyond the global indicators. However, I just want to take note that of the private sector indicator in the global indicator framework, and that's 12.6.1, companies with sustainability reports. But there is much beyond the global indicator framework that the private sector can do to advance the SDGs and contribute to the achievement of the goals. I note UNCTAD has set out a series of 33 indicators for the private sector that they can use to report on and examine the progress to advance the 2030 agenda. The Global Compact can also help advance and create space for the private sector. And many countries are also working with the private sector to find ways to integrate private sector data and information into the 2030 agenda so that the private sector can see themselves, because they have an important role to play in achievement of the 17 goals. With respect to the public sector SDG efforts, I note specifically the global indicator 12.7.1, which is the public procurement policies indicator. But I think more than that, the public sector as government can be found throughout the entirety of the framework. Means of implementation indicators related to policy, legislation, etc. Those are all related to the public sector. And of course, the government more largely sets the environment for achievement of the goals and sets. So if you think about goal 1, poverty has the government put in place, poverty reduction strategies, etc. So the government, I think you can see, or the public sector is widely found throughout the global framework. So with that, I'm going to actually turn to Karen and I'll let her answer one of the questions that we received. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Cara. I will go through the question about what ways can community-driven data be used to complement official statistics in monitoring the SDGs and ensure that no one is left behind. Well, citizen-generated data has a high potential for monitoring SDGs. In different studies, I've seen lists of several SDG indicators that can be measured using citizen science. Overall, what I've seen, I can say that there are 3 ways in which citizen-generated data can contribute. The first one, some national statistics office have the mandate to explore the use of non-traditional data sources to complement their report on SDGs. Second, some countries have been using citizen-generated data or citizen science to fill in data gaps in important sectors or thematic areas where that they could not cover using household surveys, administrative data, and overall traditional sources. And third, citizen-generated data is often used for local level monitoring, sometimes in combination with specific accountability and feedback mechanisms. This means that citizen science can be included in different phases of the statistical production in the prioritization exercise to define data needs, also data from civil society organizations as source of information, citizens participating in data collection processes, both through the creation of web apps and also through data that is in social networks, for example, and in the last phase of the dissemination of information, and of course the use of all data that is producing for monitoring SDGs. Usually citizen science is used in combination with data science and machine learning techniques. So those projects are mostly run by experimental statistics, and the number of countries experimenting with this kind of methods is small still. However, we can see a growing interest in the use of citizen science, and also some countries have started to work in protocols regarding the quality assurance of these innovations in the production of statistics. And with this, I'm going back to you, Cara. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. I think that that's a really good answer, and I think we did receive several other questions. Unfortunately, we do not have the time because we're 2 minutes to our allotted time, and we do not have the time to go through that. I would like to thank everybody for their participation. I think we can safely say that VNRs and implementation are really key to the achievement of the goals, and of course the data and the statistics that national statistics offices and UN entities and other multilateral groups have are key for that implementation and for the success of the 2030 agenda. I'm going to now turn it to colleagues from UNSD and see if they have any final remarks for us.
Thank you so much, Cara. I just wanted to mention again that a lot of the questions have come in through the chat, and so we will try to share all of that information online as well. In addition, there were some questions that were received in the registration regarding for the VNR countries, in particular about best practices and lessons learned that they would recommend to other countries that have been answered in the chat. So again, we'll share that information online. We'd just like to thank everyone for joining, and we look forward to seeing you again in the next quarter in September, and we'll have confirmation of the timing of that coming in the next couple months. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.